You're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Bruce Farrell. Bruce is a proposal director for Plante Moran's consulting group. He's also a design geek who specializes in bringing strong design principles to brands, proposals, presentations, and other business documents. He particularly enjoys using thoughtful design to help create documents that can make an impact. Bruce is a frequent presenter at the Association of Proposal Management Professional APMP events, primarily focusing on presentation or proposal design. He's a member of APMP's International Board of Directors. Welcome, Bruce, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here.
So Bruce, if you've listened to our podcast before, we typically start kind of in the beginnings. We're curious where you were born, where you grew up, and where you went to school.
Okay. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I've lived in this area most of my life. I went to a public school, Hazel Park High School, which is not too far from where I live now. When I got out of high school, I took a few years off and for silly reasons. And then I went to Central Michigan University, where I got a bachelor's degree in history and political science. And then I moved to Wisconsin. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I got a master's degree in higher education. And then I did a year of postgraduate work at the University of Michigan. And now I work in proposals.
Oh, wow. So what did you do during those 2 years off?
I actually took 3 years off. And I took 3 years off because I had a girlfriend, and I had a full ride to the University of Michigan, and I didn't want to be far away from home, and which is just a ridiculous reason not to go to college, especially when it's all paid for. And so of course she broke up with me around Christmas, and now I'm not in college, and I'm working at a car dealership. So I worked at a car dealership. I did everything in the service area. I was a porter. I was a warranty clerk. I worked in parts. I just kind of did whatever they wanted me to do.
Very interesting. So then you went off, you went to school, you kind of stayed where it's cold. You're a cold weather person.
Yeah, pretty much.
What is your favorite thing about the area up there? I know it's beautiful with the lakes and everything.
Yeah, I think the lakes are my favorite part. I mean, our family is here, which plays into it. We lived in Wisconsin for 3 years. And then when we moved back, we had just had our son. And, it's weird being away from family when you have a child. And moving back here closer to home and having those people around, we really want to stay here because the family is really important to us. But, I love four seasons. I love winter. It snowed yesterday and a lot of people were complaining about it, but I like snow. I like cold. My dog's freaked out about it. She looks back at me like, whoa, I thought we were done with this. Is it winter again?
Oh my goodness. Poor thing. So you got your education, your schooling, master's degree, and you said education?
Yeah.
So was your first job in education, or what did you do after finishing university?
Yeah. Well, after I got my bachelor's, I moved to Wisconsin to take a job at Lawrence University, and I was a residence hall director, and I also worked in student activities. And while I was there, I got my master's degree in higher education, which is basically the study of colleges and universities. And the thought is that I would then go to Michigan, which I did, and get a PhD and become a professor. That was the path I was on. But after spending a year at Michigan, which I loved, I was just kind of disillusioned with the whole idea. It seemed like it was going to take way longer than I expected it to take. And I wasn't enjoying it all that much. I was kind of what I thought I would be doing and what I wanted to do. And then when I got there and I was actually doing research, it's like, this is not what I thought it would be. And I don't want to spend my whole life doing this. So I got out.
Yeah. It's good that you were able to realize that and you didn't just kind of keep pushing through it because that was what you had originally thought. You were able to adjust and go on a different path. So was your first job out of that in proposals or in something different?
I went back to dealerships for a few years because I'd I'd actually worked at a dealership for 8 years off and on, because when I went away to college, I would come home during the summer and breaks, and every time I came back, even if it was for a few days, they had work for me, because you always need the extra hand who kind of knows how things run, right?
Absolutely.
So when I left the academia, I went back to work at a dealerships a couple of years, and then that landed me at a fleet management company, which is called QEK. It's not there anymore, and there I started working more in business development and proposals.
Okay, very cool. So you kind of like fell into it after going to the fleet management.
Yeah, kind of not everybody, but so many people in this field end up kind of backing into it. Every job I've ever had, though, I've always been, he's that guy that writes. So if there's a newsletter, Bruce is going to write it. With the last company, for a long time, I was basically the ghost writer for everybody in the company. So if you saw something written by, somebody in senior management, I either wrote it or it crossed my desk and got heavily edited. Which is really how I landed in proposals. I think I was the operations manager for a facility when I started doing a lot of this writing. And then we'd get these big OEM, which are automotive suppliers and automotive companies. We'd get these big RFPs, and we'll get Bruce because he's the guy who writes. And that's how I ended up in this field.
Yeah, just a skill set that was on demand, and they were like, Bruce is our guy. Very cool.
I don't know if it's cool. I don't know if it get you a lot of chicks,
So over the years, it sounds like you've probably participated in some interesting proposal and capture efforts. Do you have any that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think, the first one that I did with Plante Moran sticks out because, of course, it's the first one, and, nobody had ever been in this role at Plante Moran before I started. The proposals were being written by subject matter experts, and they might have some help from marketing. They might not. We were structured very differently then. And nobody was quite sure if they would even use me. I was hired as a contractor, and, there was like a 1,000-hour cap or 6 months, like whichever came first. And I was really happy that immediately people were using me a lot. I was working, 60 hours a week, or I couldn't believe how much a demand there was. Anyway, the first one we had, I was with a partner who I still work with, and I didn't know how it was going because he's kind of a hard guy to read. And honestly, I thought maybe he didn't like me, or maybe he wasn't happy with the way things went. But I put in a lot of work, and I thought we made a big difference, and we did get the work. And I just got the nicest thank you note from him, and it was unexpected because I wasn't sure really how he felt about it and whether he'd ever use me again. And I've written a zillion proposals for him in the years since, and that's one that sticks out for sure.
Definitely. Those ones that, maybe you feel are rocky, you're not quite sure, but then you get such a nice thank you. Sometimes, in this field, we feel like it's kind of a thankless job. So, when people really take the time to send a nice thank you note, definitely something that'll stick out. Yeah.
And honestly, the people at Plante Moran, there's a lot of really nice people who work here. And I usually don't feel like people are ungrateful. I can say that. I think the last company I worked with, there were times where I felt like, wow, I don't think anybody recognized that I did this. But I get a lot of recognition. This particular guy is just kind of a hard read. He's got a great poker face.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like a great organization with a great culture.
It is.
So before we dig into, more of the proposal side and the APMP contributions, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
Like Randy Richter, I'm also an introvert. And I think that surprises most people because I'm in front of people a lot. But my first instinct, especially when I meet people or I'm in a new situation, is to run and hide. when I fly somewhere, when my wife flies somewhere, she knows everybody around her. She can tell you who they were, whether they have kids or not. And, oh, their wife is, doing this. She knows everything about them. When I fly, I'm aware there are people around me, pretty sure they're either male or female. And that's pretty much it, because I put my blinders on. I don't really want to be bothered. And it's not because I'm a jerk. Maybe I am a jerk, but it's because it stresses me out. So that's, I guess, one thing. I think people who know me now would be really surprised at what a hothead I was when I was younger. I had an awful temper and I held grudges. I was just not in a very healthy place, I think, when I was a young man. And fortunately, I've been able to put most of that behind me. But I think it would surprise people if they saw me back then. I don't think most people know that I'm a pretty big fantasy and science fiction nerd. I've read Lord of the Rings probably 50 times.
Oh my gosh. That's a big series to read so many times.
Well, when you're a big geek.
Oh my goodness. Very cool.
Again, I'm not sure it's so cool.
You know what? I think a lot of those personality traits span a ton of people in our industry. And so for others to hear, that there's someone else who is so prominent and active in the industry that they can relate to, is very cool to so many of our listeners. So.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad. And I've talked about this before. I remember talking about this with Lisa Rahuric on a podcast. And I think the message that I would give people is you can get over it. You can kind of push past those initial feelings of not feeling comfortable in a public situation, or when you're out front, that it goes away. It gets better, if you do it more, and if you're, kind of proactive in making that decision. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great encouragement and words of wisdom for sure for those listening who might feel that way. So Bruce, when did you join APMP as a member?
I think it was about 2010. I didn't even know APMP existed. Frankly, I didn't know anybody else was writing proposals. It was stunning to me that there was an organization of people who, did what I was doing when I thought I was like the only one on the planet. So yeah, about 2010.
Very cool. And, I know I felt, relieved knowing that there was such a large community and resources out there once I discovered APMP.
Yeah.
So, what about your first time participating at Bid and Proposal Con? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. My first Bid and Proposal Con was Dallas in 2012. And I presented The Death of Death by PowerPoint. And it was great. It was just a great experience. It was great I felt like I was among my people in this industry, this group in particular. It's so friendly and welcoming. And I just felt like a family member almost immediately.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a great, warm organization and welcoming to all participants.
Yeah.
You mentioned your presentation was The Death of Death by PowerPoint. What triggered your interest in presentations and designs?
That's a good question. I think I've always been kind of interested in creative pursuits and things that where I can think outside the box and be creative in some way. And I'm also somebody who's always been in front of people. I've always been, whether it was theater or choirs or the bands that I play in, that I'm frequently in front of people. And I think presentations, especially being able to deliver them, is kind of it's a perfect marriage of my interests and my skills. When I got the job I got now, I remember thinking that when I looked at the job description, and presentations was certainly part of it, it was almost like they looked at my resume and personality and built the job title around it,
Yeah.
And so anyway, to me, it's that drive to be creative and also bring order to things, try to make the complex simple. I find that really challenging and fun and interesting when somebody can give you this like big, messy idea and you can distill it down to its key points so that they can cut through. I just love being able to do that. It really means a lot to me when we can deliver a presentation or I deliver it, whatever. And it's like, wow, that really cut through. We did what we wanted to do.
Absolutely. So would you consider yourself an artistic individual?
That's a good question. My wife and I talk about this time and again because, about being right brain or left brain, because I know people who are far more creative than I am. And then that makes me feel like I'm a pretender, like I'm really not that creative, right? But then there's other people who I'm clearly more creative, or at least I'm more comfortable, in that space. I think I am. I think if you look at the things that I do, I think I would have to conclude that I am a creative person, and I do enjoy creative pursuits a lot.
Yeah. So, are there any design resources or tools that you would suggest for beginners wanting to improve their presentation skills?
Yeah, for sure. I think Nancy Duarte's Slideology is, to me, the place that anybody should start if they want to create presentations that make an impact. It's just a really good book. Gar Reynolds' Presentation Zen is another book that I like a lot, and I think he and I share a design aesthetic of simplicity and no clutter, that kind of thing. And I think there are some really useful lessons there, and it's something. Those are both books that anybody can read. They're not so deep into theory that you'll get lost, and they're not at all about presentation tip or rather PowerPoint tips. They are core design, which is really the most important part. Anybody can figure out how to use PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever you're using, but being able to apply good design, that's a agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you're using Prezi or PowerPoint or whatever. So those are books that are really good at that. Mike Parkinson's book is really good too. He's got some great graphics, great ideas in there, easy to read, accessible for anybody.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned a couple presentation tools that go beyond PowerPoint. I think you mentioned Prezi. What were some of the others that you mentioned?
Well, Apple used to have Keynote. I don't know if they still do because I'm not an Apple guy.
Okay.
But I only use PowerPoint just because it's easiest and I'm most familiar with it. And frankly, it can do everything that I need it to do. I've seen people use Prezi and just create horrible Prezis because they don't know design. So basically, you're just moving from bulleted list to bulleted list and making everybody dizzy in between. So I'm able to do what I want with PowerPoint. I just do everything in that.
So basically you're saying it doesn't matter if the tool is amazing. If you don't have the design principles in place, the result is just not going to be as strong.
That is exactly it.
Design clearly has a big impact on slide presentations and oral presentations and that aspect of proposals. What about proposal design? What are some tips that you could give listeners on how to make sure that the proposal design is effective?
Well, I think that whatever you do, you need to make a document that's easy to scan. And you can do that by applying things like repetition, so the document hierarchy is very clear. I've seen templates before where every header basically looks the same, and I don't know how to find anything. I can't tell what's more important. Sometimes you'd have things that are really not important, really, really big, and that's not good design. You want to use color and size and these contrast items to draw their eye to A, what they want to find, or B, what you want them to see. And if it isn't one of those two things, then it shouldn't be big. It shouldn't be colorful. So I think keeping that in mind, that the reader's probably not going to read the document from start to finish. They're going to look at it first and find what they're looking for. And they may not even get past that. They might just find exactly what they're looking for. It might be the price. It might be something about the work plan. It might be the deliverables, whatever. And you just need to be able to make that really easy for them to find. I think white space, making good use of white space is for print or for screen. But I see people who feel like they've got to get every inch of that page full with something. And I understand sometimes you have page limits, but usually with page limits, I'll tell people, they're not asking you to use an 8-point font and no margin. They're asking you to use some restraint in what you write, because they don't want to have to read all that. So I don't change my margins. I don't change my font. I just edit the answer. so that it's more concise. And I guess along with that, it's just that whole restraint, right? That one of the things that comes up, for example, is too much color. If you've got color all over a page, your eye won't know where to look. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I try to save the color for the things, again, I really want them to see, or I know they're going to be looking for it, so that they can easily find it and their eye will automatically be drawn to it. And if I have color all over the place, then, your eye is drawn to color, but it could be confused. It can be, I don't know where to look. I don't know how to find what I'm looking for. So having some restraint, I think, is really important when you're designing any document, print or screen.
Definitely. It's great advice and really helpful for those listening. I've definitely seen those templates that are just too messy and too unfocused, and they're just hard to look at. So that restraint and that focus and that understanding what you're using color for are all very great.
And I'll just add the whole idea that if you design a proposal or a presentation, then it's well designed, it's orderly, it's easy for the reader to find what they're looking for. It's evidence that you care. It's evidence that you put thought into it. When you hand somebody a proposal that's messy, that it's hard to find what they're looking for, that's aggravating. And it just kind of shows that you didn't put your best effort in. That doesn't speak well of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no, I couldn't agree more, Bruce. So you're also really involved at the APMP chapter level. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement and why you think it's important to be involved in the chapter level with APMP?
Well, I came to, APMP through the chapter, basically. And so I've been on the Greater Midwest chapter board for, I think this is my 7th year.
Wow.
And I was 3 years as chair, and I've been the webmaster basically every other year. And it's a great way to affect people on a retail level, I think, and to maintain these connections throughout the year. Because, APMP International, we have been ProposalCon, then we don't see each other for a year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I see people a little more now that I'm on the board, but I'll go a whole year without seeing a whole lot of people. At the chapter level, we hold, local events. We have our own symposium. It's a way to kind of maintain that connection and to get more value because we're doing our own webinars. We have our own newsletter. We're having our local meetups and things like that. I think that's where APMP touches people the most is through the chapters. And you got to have people who are willing to do the work to make those things happen. And what I found is that the more people we get on the board and on our committees, the easier it is to get more people because it's many hands and light work. And I think our chapter's done an exceptional job, certainly the last few years, of bringing in new people who can come in and give leadership a go and decide whether it's for them or not, and to help us with programs that wouldn't get off the ground because we wouldn't have the people. We wanted to do local meetups forever. And we did them, but we did them very sporadically. And then we had somebody who was interested in being on the board, and she wanted to put together local meetups. And now we have a ton of them.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
That only happened because somebody volunteered to do it.
Yeah, so it's so critical to have those volunteers, and it does enable the chapters to get so much more done.
Yes,
absolutely. So you mentioned your first presentation, the Death by PowerPoint. Do you have any other memorable presentations from APMP, Bid and ProposalCon, or even maybe the local symposiums?
That I gave or that other people gave?
Either.
Well, I think the favorite presentation that I've given is when I got the science of presentation design, because I studied design, I've read a lot about it, but design doesn't really talk much about how the brain works. And so I did some research into why good design is good design. Is good design good design, really? I kind of started with that assumption that it might not be. Maybe I've been wrong all these years,
Yeah. And
it turns out that good design is good design because of the way we think, the way that our brain operates, the way that we consume data and information and sensory input. And that was really fun to look into, and then to be able to share it with people and see some people like give those ahas. I got a lot of ahas that year.
Yeah.
And that was probably my favorite one that I've done. As far as other people, boy, there have been so many. I mean, I'd see Mike Parkinson any day, Samantha Ensslin, Nancy Webb, Richard Goring, obviously. The one that sticks out to me, though, is I think it was the first time or second time I saw Tom Sant, and he was doing executive summaries. And, I already knew about the nose method, and that was interesting to hear him talk through it. And near the end of his session, he asked somebody he didn't know out from the crowd who was having trouble with an executive summary. And he said, let's see if we can work on that. And he went through it, he had a whiteboard. What do they need? And, she told him what they need. And there were like 3 or 4 needs identified. And then, okay, what kind of outcomes? What does the end product look like? Okay, this. And he went through the whole, needs, outcomes, solutions, and evidence on a whiteboard. And then right off the top of his head, he looked at the board and just out loud wrote an executive summary that I would put in a proposal today. It was mind blowing that how he was able to pull it all together in such a clear and coherent way with something he had never heard of, 5 or 10 minutes before. It blew my mind. He's just phenomenally talented.
Yeah, so much talent and almost like proposal magic, right? Like how on earth was he able to do that?
It did. It felt like a little bit like magic to me. I mean, I got goosebumps when he did it, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I think that's a great segue into our surprise rapid fire questions round, Bruce.
Bruce, amazing. I can see a lot of musical instruments at the back of you. Maybe we'll start with that, Bruce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I know you play a lot of you play a musical instrument, but what's your favorite?
Well, it's guitar. I do play a little bit of keyboard, and I can play a harmonica a little bit. And I think that's probably it. I guess I play bass guitar, which is a little bit different than playing regular guitar. But guitar is really my instrument of choice.
Right. I know I didn't give you any heads up. Do you want to play a little tune?
Oh, no, I don't think people would want to hear me play a tune.
No? Yeah, have a go. Come on.
Here, can I play something and not sing it?
Yeah, up to you.
I hope this is guitars in tune. I didn't expect this. Here, let me. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of sloppy.
Amazing, Bruce. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. I know I should have given you a heads up, but that's brilliant. Sometimes spontaneous music, it sounds much better, but that's brilliant. So,
thank you.
Bruce, what was the first live concert you ever attended?
I think the first concert I ever saw was the Edgar Winter Group at a state fair when I was, probably 5 or 6. The first concert I went to as that I paid for was Ian Hunter and Shooting Star, which would have been like 1982 at Kobo.
Okay. So you still have memories of that. Wow, that's like 30, 35.
It was a great show.
Wow, that's great. So what's your favorite song that you sing in normal karaoke if you do go for karaoke? Why?
I don't do karaoke. I don't really like it that much because I think I just have hangups and I just don't care for it. But I think it's great that people enjoy it. It's just not something I enjoy. And the other thing is, if you're a musician, people just assume you love karaoke, and then will pressure you to go sing. And I don't really want to. I feel much more comfortable with a guitar in my hands and just doing that. Yeah. So of the songs that I sing, though, I write my own music, but the cover songs, I really like to sing Down Under by Men at Work. And I like a lot of Irish music. Black Velvet Band is one of my very favorite songs to sing. It's like the quintessential Irish song. It has everything an Irish song needs. There's a woman, and there's leaving home, and there's alcohol, and a bar, and all that.
Oh, nice. So let's assume that's your favorite song, and I assume you also sing that song when you're alone.
Yeah, for sure.
What memory does it bring back to you, Bruce?
Black Velvet Band. I think the fact that it covers so much of the Irishness of it. My grandfather, his parents came directly from Ireland, and I wasn't really listening to much of Irish Celtic music when I was younger, but they really meant a lot to him. And as I got older, I could see why they did. That a lot of the Celtic music is kind of sad. It's kind of pensive. Because it all kind of derives from, or not all of it, but a lot of it derives from the potato famine and people having to leave their homes, or people on prison ships on their way to Australia, things like that. That there's a heavy kind of pensive, sad, melancholy part of it that I find, captures an era and a people. And even though it's not part of my direct history, I am, mostly Irish. And I know people who, these things really do mean a lot to them. And therefore it means a lot to me.
Wow, that's very beautiful. Have you been to Ireland?
I have not. I've been to England, not been to Ireland.
Okay. So
I need to go. I know.
So if you could anywhere else be right now, where would it be?
If I could be anywhere else. That's a good question. Because I like it here. If I could be anywhere else, I have a team in Mumbai, and I just had a Zoom meeting with them right before this, and I miss Mumbai, while I'm on the plane back from Mumbai. So I guess maybe there, although it's really hot there right now. But that's going to be my answer.
Oh, that's perfect. So, so if you could plan an ultimate vacation with your wife, where would you go?
Well, we travel to national parks a lot, and we've been to pretty much all the ones that we really, really want to see. I guess if I were, I would probably want to go maybe to Australia or Ireland. Let's say Australia, because I went to Australia in 2003 or 2002, I can't remember. But I went for work, and I was there for about a month by myself. But I really loved it, and there's so much to see there. I think it would be great to see that country with my wife.
That's brilliant. Let's hope this quarantine period finishes soon and we all can move about.
Yeah, you can't even get in Australia now, so.
That's brilliant. So, because I know you are a creative person, Bruce. So if we kind of take PowerPoint as an example, what PowerPoint design or symbol or shape best describes your personality and why?
I want to say a square. I think, yeah. I mean, you know what? I'm going to stick with that because I like clean lines. When in design, I'm all about, simplicity and clarity, and a lot of times that is really more about order than being splashy. I worked with a designer for a while who was really, really super creative and really used shapes that were really funky, and it was really cool to look at, but I didn't understand any of it. It lacked clarity. I would rather have something that's simple and clear than something that's great looking, but not clear at all.
You mentioned that you have read a Lord of the Rings like 50 times. So I can imagine even if you read it once, it takes hours to finish the entire volume, well, the multiple volumes as you can. What triggered your interest on Lord of the Rings, and why Lord of the Rings?
Well, it's interesting how people come to things and how their friends influence them. And I think I read The Hobbit when I was in junior high. I was probably in 8th grade. And then shortly thereafter, our school did the play The Hobbit, and I played Bilbo Baggins. Bruce Farrell is Bilbo Baggins. And so I was really, kind of interested in it and engaged in it. And while we were doing the play, I read the Lord of the Rings, which would just completely drew me in. And that might have just been that. I probably would have read it again, but I wouldn't have read it as often as I did. But then when I started high school, like the first week of high school, I sat down with a guy that I'd known since preschool. I'd always been friends with him, but he quickly became my best friend because we both read Lord of the Rings, like recently. And we just couldn't stop talking about it, which led us to read it. And then we had one other friend, and we've literally, the three of us are best friends and have been ever since. And it was all based around, those books. And we read other books. And, when I say I read them 50 times, I'm not exaggerating, but I think I read them a ton in the years between 10th grade and when I went away to college. Since then, I've read it. Dave, I know, reads it once a year. I think he reads it with his wife. I'll read it sporadically now. I might go a couple of years without reading it, and then I might read it a couple times in a year. They're like old friends to me. It made the movies hard to watch, not because I didn't like the movies, but every change from the book, because I know I'm so intimately familiar with the book. Why'd they do that? I don't know. I guess I might have done it that way, and it kind of makes it hard to enjoy the film when you're kind of psychoanalyzing the director.
Yes, I was about to ask you that. So, because you did mention that Bruce is close to Bilbo Baggins. So, do you find any similarity with Bilbo?
Yeah, kind of. I think that he was swept away on an adventure, and he didn't have much control over it, certainly at the beginning. And then he eventually got more control. And I just recently told somebody, I've always felt there was a Forrest Gump quality to my life, in that it's not, I don't really feel like I deserve anything that I've gotten particularly. I'm not really that talented. I'm really just this guy. And, but I've found myself in these really great situations, and it's kind of being at the right place at the right time, I think. And certainly that's with Bilbo Baggins. I mean, if Gandalf doesn't knock on his door, then nothing ever happens to him. He's just going to stay home and be the person he was destined to be without, that adventure. And had I stayed home and not went to college, for example, I would probably still live in this little town I grew up in, and I wouldn't have done anything that I've done going forward. So I've been really fortunate. And I think Bilbo was really fortunate that, an adventure found him, because adventures find me all the time.
Yes, that's nice. I could ask you what you would have done if you have got the ring yourself, Bruce.
Well, I like to think that I would destroy it, but I think we know that unless you're, one of a few people, you don't have it in you to do. So,
yes,
I would try to use it for good and completely bungle it.
It's not easy. I think the responsibility, as the Spider-Man said, responsibility. Ask for it. It's not easy to manage it. I know I just paraphrased it, but that is a nice way of Spider-Man.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you look at and you already touched, because you have read a book and you know the minute details of the book. So adaptation wise, yes, it's been converted to radio, to films, to television, even stage musicals, and all the way to music as well. Which one of it you think it's closely aligned to, or something that you consider maybe, they have done a good job there?
I thought the movies were really good. I think it was exceptional. The cast was exceptional, almost to a person. They just did a great job casting it. And I think he told most of the story pretty faithfully. My big problems were in the second movie, where he basically added things to the story. in the book, his spoiler here, Gandalf doesn't fall, or not Gandalf, Aragorn doesn't fall over a cliff down by the river. That doesn't happen. So I was kind of disappointed that he had to add things to a story that was already pretty busy. And Faramir's character is completely different, which really bothered me. But taken on whole, it's a great big task, and a director has to make creative decisions. So unless you're just going to read the book, which I've heard people do on the radio, then I think the movies are actually a pretty good representation of the books. The Hobbit movies are horrible, but the Lord of the Rings ones are great.
Yes, that's great. I loved it as well. So, other than Lord of the Rings, what other favorite books do you have? Do you say
recently?
Or anything?
Okay. Well, Watership Down was always one of my favorite books. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Boy, what a great book that is. Mm-hmm. That one surprised me. I had to read that for college, and I was kind of like, really? I'm reading Frankenstein? And I guess I had, Boris Karloff, kind of in my head. And it's like, no, good heavens, this is riveting stuff. Yeah. Recently, I don't read as much fiction in the last few years. Of course, I read the Game of Thrones, but that's not done yet. And I'm getting a little aggravated. But I read a lot of nonfiction. Bill Bryson, anything by Bill Bryson is just great with me. And I'm currently reading The Body, A User's Guide, which is a Bill Bryson book.
Oh, wow, yes. Bill Bryson is unbelievable.
His sense of humor, man.
Yeah. Yes, I think most people in England, I think they'll know more about England after reading that book than any other historical books about,
Yeah.
My God, it's amazing. So, right. Looking at movies and other things, do you have a favorite movie, or is there any movie that you think, that character in that movie is me, Bruce? Is anything that's close to that sort of thing?
Well, I think my favorite movie is probably The Godfather, and none of those characters are me, but to me, that's about as close to a perfect movie as I can imagine. That the performances are so great, and it's such a good interesting tale, rather. So if The Godfather's on, I sit down and I watch it. So there's that. Characters that are me. I don't feel that too much in movies. I feel that more in books, because over the years there have been different characters that it's really easy for me to put myself in their shoes. The character Ged from A Wizard of Earthsea, for example, is one that was really easy for me because I was a hot-tempered kid, and I think I had higher expectations for myself, maybe a bit full of myself, and I think that played into it. I don't really think of too many characters in movies that are much like me. I'd be curious if have my wife answer that question. I think I will when she gets home.
Maybe ask her and let me know. That'd be brilliant. So, because you mentioned Godfather, I mean, if you do get into fight with somebody, do you think there is any song comes to your mind as a soundtrack?
The Benny Hill theme. I don't know. I don't know. A Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee or something like that, something fast, because fights happen. I mean, sadly, I know this because when I was a young man, I was in very many fights, and they're over very quickly. Fights just don't last that long. People don't have that much stamina, and most people don't really want to fight. So if you punch somebody, they're usually surprised and trying to end the fight.
That's good.
Don't ask me how I know.
Yes, then moving back from fights to, do you have a favorite love story, movie, or a book?
Movie or a book? I liked, we read a Time Traveler's Wife for a book club, and I rather enjoyed the book. I haven't seen the movie, but I did rather enjoy the book, and I really liked the idea of how the man and the woman, this man who jumps kind of back and forth through time and doesn't have any control over it, is tied to this woman. He's tied to this woman that he loves from, almost as long as he can remember. And that's how I've always felt about my wife. And it was, it really related to those characters, and it moved me because of that.
So let's go to the real random ones now, because
Okay. Those weren't random?
So, if you were to perform in the circus, what would you do?
I'd probably do trapeze. I've always enjoyed sports and physical things, and I don't mind heights. I think that'd be fun.
Got you. That's brilliant. So, what kind of secret society would you like to start?
A round Earth society, maybe. I think that'd be great.
I think there are enough people who started that, Bruce.
Yeah, that's one that just mystifies me. And I honestly thought it was a joke, the Flat Earth Society. And then I know people who actually believe the Earth is flat. I'm like, really? Wow.
Scary, isn't it? So, if you have to wear a T-shirt with one word on it for the rest of your life, which word do you choose?
Peace.
Okay. So, what's your favorite pizza toppings?
Pepperoni, double pepperoni. It's really the only requirement I have of pizza, that it has pepperoni on it.
I would 100% agree with you on that. So,
I think most people do. The funny thing is, if you order pizza in a group, everybody will say, "Oh, I want the one with. Can you order mushrooms? And can you order one with everything? And one with pepperoni." And everybody eats the one with pepperoni. Why did we just get 3 of those?
That's right. So, if someone rented a billboard for you, what would you put on it?
Wow. Let's all get along, or something like that. I think the world just functions better when people try to get along, which is why I would choose peace. And maybe that's what I'd put on it, because I'm a peace and love kind of guy at heart. And that's something like that.
So do you scream on roller coasters, or do you lift up your hands and laugh and enjoy?
I laugh. I just love roller coasters. My wife and I, we live near Cedar Point, which is like the roller coaster, focal point in the U.S. here. And we've been there countless times. And that's all we do. Roller coaster to roller coaster. And we laugh the whole time.
Oh, my God. Okay. So what's the scariest thing other than roller coasters? For me, that's the scariest thing. What's the scariest thing you have ever done in your life? Even for fun.
Scariest thing. I think probably the most, I'm trying to think, I think the most scared I've been is I was up hiking in northern Michigan with Dave, the guy who became my friend through Lord of the Rings. He was going to college up there. And we did some hiking, and we were kind of hiking along where a waterfall was. And I decided to climb like over next to the waterfall, basically on what I thought was rock, but turned out to be mud. And I started to slip down, and it's about 50 or 60 feet up and rocks below me. And had I fallen, I would have been, I would have been either badly injured or worse. And fortunately, as I was sliding down, there was like a tree growing out of the side of it, like a small tree. And I was able to catch it almost like, like in a Roadrunner cartoon or something. And then I was able to figure out how to like work over to where it wasn't mud. But it was really scary. It didn't even occur to me that might happen. And suddenly I'm like, oh.
Oh, wow. That does look scary. I mean, like, that's great. So if you could mix 3 animals together, which one would you choose to make the ultimate animal?
Well, I love dogs, so it'd have to be a dog. And I think maybe like an eagle, because it would be cool if dogs could fly. And I'm trying to think of what else. And maybe a cat. And maybe the front end of a cat, the back end of a dog, or maybe vice versa, and then be able to fly. Because cats are really graceful too. If you could make a dog as graceful as a cat, that'd be a pretty great dog.
Wow, so cats, dogs, and one more?
Eagle. Because it's got to fly too, right?
Oh, wow, that's the ultimate, yeah, 100%. Perfect. So What's something that you have that is of sentimental value to you?
I'm really not a sentimental guy. And I don't hold on to things for sentiment. I look around like my office space and, I have instruments, but none of them, they're just instruments, they're tools. I do have one guitar that I actually don't own, but it was the first real guitar that I ever had. It's a Flying V. It's a Ibanez Rocket Roll 2. And a friend who I had been playing music with needed some money, so he sold it to my dad, who gave it to me. And then when I was in grad school, I needed some money, so I sold it back to him. And we have since sold that guitar back and forth to each other, I think 4 times. He currently has it. But we have a pact that one of us will always own that guitar. If we sell it, we'll only sell it to the other person. And that's as close to sentimental as I get.
Oh, that's
and I do love that guitar. And I actually use it more than he does, even though he owns it.
That's great, Bruce. So, and Bruce, you mentioned that you have been working from home for a while, and pretty much in the new normal, we all will be at some point, or we will be working from home longer than what we used to in February, March. What are the top 3 tips that you give to create that environment to so or anything like that to work from home, Bruce?
Yeah, I think you need to define your workday. And we talked a little bit about this before the call, but my workday looks very different than my wife's. My wife is mostly retired, but does webinars. She's very on work or off work. There's no mixing the two. She likes to work between 9 and 5 basically, and after 5 she doesn't think about work. In the morning she doesn't think about work until she starts working. I sometimes will roll out of bed and turn my laptop on before I've even brushed my teeth, and I will work until 1 a.m. But I don't work the whole time. I take breaks throughout the day, and I mix work and play pretty seamlessly. And it works for me. So you need to figure out what works for you if you're going to work from home. I think having a space that you can work is important if you can find it. Not everybody has that luxury. But I really like that when I'm in my office and the door is shut, my wife knows that I'm working, and that, she should only interrupt me if it's important. If the door's open, she knows I'm in here and I may or may not be working, but then I'm more free for questions. I think being able to draw those boundaries for the people that you live with is really important. And you can kind of feel more focused on work that way. At least that's how it's been for me. I think the other thing is, one of the things that I talk about a lot in my presentations about presentation design is you want to limit your sensory input, because you can't multitask. We're not wired to do it. You can't think of more than one thing at a time. So every time your attention shifts, you're being distracted, and you need to reset your thinking. And it's not an efficient way to work. It's not an efficient way to get things done. So what I've done is I eliminate those distractions. So I don't watch TV while I work. I actually only have one monitor, which some people how can you only work with one monitor? It's well, we worked this way for a long time before we were multiple monitors, and it helps me focus on one thing at a time. I'm less likely to have, stuff on every window that are, demanding my attention. So I think trying to find ways to eliminate those distractions so that you can actually focus on work when you're on it is really important. And understanding that not everybody can do that. Sometimes we have people living with many people in their homes. A lot of people have, God bless, young kids. And, if I had school age children in here, it would be very different. It would be much harder than just shutting the door. So, but I think trying to provide that distraction-free environment is important.
So now looking back at your career in life, Bruce, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Well, the first and easy answer is a woman named Miss Kelly, who was my first grade teacher and third grade teacher. And I grew up in a home where I didn't get a lot of attention, and we didn't have a lot of money, and because my parents had problems of their own, and she kind of took me under her wing, and she bought me books that we couldn't afford. I got sports equipment from her that I couldn't afford. And she instilled in me the idea that education is critically important, that I didn't pick up at home, because neither of my parents went to college. My mom didn't graduate from junior high, I don't think. And so they didn't really value education, but Miss Kelly did. And then she followed me, not in a creepy way, but I mean, she was along with me all through grade school, junior high, high school. She came to my plays. She showed up at sporting events, and I would come by and visit her, and we would talk about it. What am I doing? How am I doing in my classes and things like that? And it would have been really easy for me to get lost in those years. And my life would be very, very different if it weren't for Miss Kelly. And I was really grateful that I maintained contact with her till she died, and which was just a few years ago. And I was able to tell her this multiple times. Just thank you for the impression that you've made on my life, that every success I've had has her fingerprints on it. And so she's like my number one person. My boss at my last job for a while was a guy named Ron Schell. And he really put my career on track. He would really mentored me to understand that I had control of my career, that I didn't have to let my career happen. I could actually direct it someplace. And since those discussions that I had with him, that's the way my career has been ever since. It's been great. Maybe not all because, but mostly because I had this discussion with him and he took me under his wing. I think the other person would be my wife. My wife is just as kind as the day is long. And I've learned so much from her about how to be a human being. I think when she met me, I was still that hot-headed, kid who, probably I don't even know why she was with me. But I've learned a lot from her over the years. And I like to think I'm a better person now because I've been around her for so long.
That's so beautiful, Bruce. So what have you observed lately that reminded you that people are good considering we are now in COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I think that, it's really easy to get lost in what you see on TV and, some of the rancor and dissension. And, that's real. I get it. But I think most people are taking this pretty well and are supporting each other. I love the humor that I see. I love the endless memes that I run across about the situation and how you have to kind of find some humor in something like this. This is a pandemic. It's horrible. People are dying, right? But just like Mel Brooks made fun of the Holocaust and Hitler, I think it's okay to make fun of this stuff, and people do, and I just love it. And I just see a lot of people supporting one another, people just reaching out to people who are maybe not as comfortable in this situation, people making that extra call, because we know that some people are extroverts. My wife's, crawling the walls a little bit because she's very extroverted. And she's not alone. And this is harder for them than it is for me. And I see people reaching out to each other to either ask for help or give it. I just think that's wonderful. I think people are good.
That's brilliant, Bruce. I'm sure. I think, people, good news is, people whom we interview, they all have been sharing the same ethos, which is quite amazing. So yeah, yes, let the message go out. Everybody is good. So the last one from me, Bruce, what's the best piece of advice you have received from?
Well, Ron Schell, who I talked about before, and I've told this story before, he was my boss, and he had me do a self-assessment, just, part of our career planning every year, or reviews. You do a self-assessment, you hand it in, and then you talk about it. And I didn't really give it any thought because nobody gives those any thought. I certainly never did. And, I put it on his desk, and 10 minutes later he came back and put it back on my desk. And he said, "What's this?" I said, "That's my self-assessment." He says, "Yeah, but you haven't really told me anything. You're just you didn't think about this. And you're just telling me I think what I want to hear." And it kind of put me back. And he said, where do you want to go? What do you want to do with your life? Because I can't help you get there if you don't tell me. And it was an epiphany for me that that was where I can direct my career some, that I have some control over it. And that I had allies, people who were going to help me do it. And it changed my career, changed my life, really.
All right, Bruce, I think we're down to our final 3 questions for you. It's been so amazing to get to know you a little bit better, get into kind of what drives you and what motivates you and kind of the inspiration behind where you've ended up in your life and career. Looking back though, what's one thing that you wish you had known when you began your career?
I think it's the lesson I got from Ron, that I had some control. I think up until that point, I just took the opportunities that were given to me. And that really started at the dealership, that I started as a service porter, which is like the low man on the totem pole at a dealer. And then when somebody said, do you want to be a warranty clerk? I said, yeah, sure. Because it was more money. And I didn't really think much about it. And that's exactly how my career was going, somebody would give me an opportunity. And if it was, more money, I'd probably take it. And consequently, you meander around a lot that way. Right. And had I not had that kind of discussion with Ron to understand that you don't have to guide your career. You can actually choose where you work. You can actually choose the kind of jobs you do, but you can't do it passively. You've got to do it. Mm-hmm. And had I known that earlier, I would have gotten here sooner.
Yeah, definitely a powerful message. And, hopefully those listening, especially younger listeners, will be able to kind of leverage that advice and take control of their career and really get to where they want to be a little bit sooner. So you've accomplished so much. What are some of the achievements that you are most proud of?
I'm happy my parents are proud of me. That means a lot to me. I think a lot of the achievements, I think I've been married almost 30 years, and I'm really happy, that I'm still as happy as I was when we got married. And, those things I consider achievements, even though they're just kind of who I am now. Yeah. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm able to do something that I love to do. That people, I have friends who hate their jobs and they complain about them, and I have nothing to say because I love the people I work for. I love what I do, and I don't think that happened by accident. I think I intentionally got here, and I'm proud of that. I think that's an achievement to end up someplace where, wow, I like going to work. I accomplish things.
Yes, all of those are so amazing, and having that family and all of the success in both your life and your career, definitely things you should be proud of. So Bruce, so much, you've done so much, you are so accomplished. What's next for you?
I don't know. Because I don't know. I think for me, I'm happy doing what I do. And I think I just want to get better at what I do. And to me, that's what's next, is that I'm a student of all this stuff. And I don't really claim to be an expert on anything that I talk about, but I study things a lot. And, I know I don't want to stay where I am now. I want to be better. I want to learn new things. I don't want to be stagnant. I don't want to be that guy who's giving the same presentation that he gave 15 years ago, because hopefully I will have learned between now and then. But I think I like how things are going. And I think if I just do more of what I do and get better at it, then I'm just going to be fat and happy.
Sounds amazing, Bruce. And continually learning, it's something we should all strive to do and never be complacent. We can always be better. We can always learn. We can always grow. So great message there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Bruce, is there any part of life and career that we haven't touched, Bruce, that we can revisit quickly?
Not really. We've talked a little bit about music, and that's pretty much the only hobby I have anymore. But I make music with a lot of people, and it's just a lot of fun and gratifying, and I love writing music. But that's maybe another time.
Definitely, Bruce. We'll have a separate music episode, as we told Robin Davis a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Robin's a good friend. And actually, we're working on recording some music together.
Oh, right. Okay. So I'd really love to bring both of you together and have a music episode. Yeah, that'll be brilliant. So do you have any of our APMP colleagues who are into music as well?
Yeah. Jeff Elkins and who else is gonna Betsy Cummings. There's a Nigel Dennis plays trombone.
Okay.
I'm forgetting people, and they're gonna kill me for it. But Yeah, there are certainly other people who play it, and Robin and I talk about music all the time when we're at Bid and Proposal Con, and sometimes in between. So I'll talk music with anybody, given the opportunity.
Perfect, Bruce. That's it. Let's keep talking. So thank you so much, Bruce, for your time today. It's really been a privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health, happiness. Please do continue to inspire Bid and Proposal colleagues and everybody around you with everything you do. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, both of you. And stay safe, stay home.
Thanks, Bruce. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.